Call your sponsor.
Call you sponsor.
Call you sponsor.
Call you.
Bitch, call your sponsor. Call your sponsor.
And maybe he could have gotten this new revelation in ACA. I don't know. I was pitching it really hard last night. But he has connected to something and been able to stay sober since he finally started working on this childhood trauma. And it just, it got me thinking about if you get into recovery and you don't start working on the tools that you can work on, such as meditation, such as somatic healing, all these things that can help with your amygdala, then it's what they say in the big book. You sober up a horse thief and you have a sober horse thief.
It's interesting, this journey we're all on, and I sometimes wonder if in AA, because I think it's like I kind of feel like it's the mothership, I think it's treated as it was the first one, right? And I know a lot of people that are qualified for CMA, Crystal Meth Anonymous. A lot of the people I've seen, a lot of them
really
go through.
CMA. There's a CMA?
Crystal meth. It's major. Yeah. Especially in the gay community. Yeah, because it's so intertwined with sex and using, and I don't have crystal in my story, but I do know a lot of people that are dually addicted. Some that are really just crystal meth, but are sent to AA because sometimes Crystal Meth Anonymous can be a trigger because it's sex and drugs, and so the meeting itself becomes a trigger, and the phone is a trigger, it's like everything's the trigger, and so they're sent to AA because there's longer term sobriety and whatever. But I sometimes wonder, like, ACA seems very advanced to me in the sense of it's very vibrant, right? They released, I want to say, a year and a half ago now, the Loving Parent Guidebook. And it's released for a period of 3 years where the fellowship is supposed to use the book and send in reports so that, on what they think should be updated to make it more user-friendly, to reach more people.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I think I want to say 2025, maybe. I don't know. The dates mixed up, but I know they released it with a 3-year thing where they were then going to update based on the fellowship's feedback. And I love that progressiveness of it. And I almost wonder, is there another book for AA, or are we just there where we are, where it's like big book, 12 and 12, the concepts, and, the, whatever, the service manual, and then the living sober and the tertiary things, courage to change and then pass it on, good old timers, all those other books, or is there opportunity really for us to continue to grow what's existing? I don't know, but I think it could be an interesting conversation. I'm not necessarily involved in service on that level. And I know that there's I think I think they're calling it the clean big book. I'm not sure if it's clean. So they're using a word where it's like all inclusive, where they're using language. My understanding is they're using language that is not, I think it's non-binary, if I heard them correctly. Don't quote me on that. You can Google it. But I don't know. I think this whole topic for me is is there opportunity for I don't know, other AA experiences that incorporate this connectedness to oneself, because Came to Believe never for me did it, as far as people found their spirituality. That book never resonated for me, and the ACA spirituality is connected. Go ahead.
I think that's a really, really interesting topic because, one, I had no idea about that with the ACA literature. I think that is the coolest thing, and way to be open-minded and not so into structure that you're not thinking of the bigger picture. And then a woman's way through the steps, I had a sponsee that asked me to get the book and the literature. I asked her to get it for me instead, and go through it that way. And you had been talking about it at the same time. And then somebody else saw me with the book and they asked me to sponsor them just because I had the book in my hand. And I just, as I'm going through it, I'm realizing, but I don't think it should be a woman's way through the steps. Basically, this thing is kind of addressing what, has been my big thing, where people who try and hide underneath the pile and take care of others before themselves. But it shouldn't just, because I have male friends in recovery who suffer from the same thing. And so, yeah, I do think that's really interesting. I do think with AA, there's so many people attached to the history and the tradition and the structure. There's so many men I can think of in the rooms that would be like, we don't change anything.
Yeah. Who are all slowly dying, I want to say. They're all slowly dying.
You're miserable, by the way. Like, I do not want
slow
what you
death.
have. You are crispy. You are so dry and crunchy.
Crunchy, crispy.
No.
Yeah.
I do not want what you have.
Yeah.
Snap, crackle, pop.
Yes, totally. Yeah. I think it'd be interesting. Similarly to, I love that you mentioned that book, and even just like the books like Drop the Rock that for me has held so much meaning.
Love.
And then there's, I think, Drop the Rock Reflections, which is 6 and 7 through the lens of 10, which I've read with a few people as well. So I don't know. I think that there's room, and what that really looks like, I have no idea. But this thing of being able to be in myself and to experience solitude versus the loneliness, to be, it's a whole new world, right?
It is a whole new world, and it feels like I'm giving myself a hug, and it allows me to go anywhere on this earth. And I was telling this story last night at dinner with these people about me going to Paris by myself, that I'd always wanted a man to take me to Paris and see the childhood home that my mother grew up in and the address that I had for it. And I kept waiting for a man to take me. And there I was at a certain age, and it's like, I gotta take me. And I was recounting that story, and the husband said, did you really go to Paris by yourself? I'm like, I really did. And I had a great time. And I got to find out more about me as I got scared to be on the metro. And I got scared when I realized, I don't know how to ask for what I need here because nobody understands me. And it was such a great experience to know myself more in the contrast than in all the goody times.
I just love that visual of you in Paris. And this, what I'm really present to right now is this, how I can be connected to myself and resource myself and regulate myself, not in a selfish way, in a self-care, self-love, self-acceptance way. And I think all too often in the program, the self-centered, self-pity, all of those are, it's kind of like the acceptance thing. Sometimes I hear like people like, yeah, well, I don't have to accept the unacceptable. I'm like, yeah, you don't have to be an effing doormat. Do you know what I mean? But it's just a matter of acknowledging like this is the way things are and that you can also change, so yeah, it's a beautiful journey. And so are we fucked, Misty?
Well, so I was just thinking as you were talking, that was it helped me a lot, because if I were to give you an illustration of how this has worked for me, it would be before ACA, walking into a grocery store thinking, what are they thinking about me? What are they thinking about me? What are they thinking about my shoes? What are they thinking about me picking up that avocado? Blah, 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 right? And then doing the work and going, look, I'm not thinking about what they're thinking about me. I'm not thinking about what they're thinking about me. I'm not thinking, and then continually going to the point where I'm like, I care what I'm thinking about me. I don't even notice if someone lands. I mean, somewhere in there's a balance, but that I'm still at the place where I'm like, look, I don't even care if they're thinking about me. And I'm so aware of it, so
Yes.
the amygdala is stretching, and it is probably, progress, not perfection. There's no there. But I
Mm.
really, as I'm progressing, I'm having so much fun with this.
The thing that keeps coming up for me, and maybe this is the book or this is the thing, is this. You always say it, equanimity, and like I think it's come up in a few of our more recent podcasts where it's the extremes, and where it
Mhm.
alludes to it in 4, like the overly depressive sponsee that is like, I'm the biggest piece of shit, right? Versus the grandiose one where it's like, y'all just
Right.
need to do your own inventory. But it's like those extremes, those polarities show up in many different ways, right? Like, I don't care what they're thinking about. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care. Versus, what are they thinking about? It's like all of those extremes. It's like that, it's like just showcasing how we're all somewhere in between, but usually leaning towards one side.
Right. And if I can just, it's kind of that saying in AA, if I can just stay near the middle, I'll be
Mm.
doing good. All right. We are on our final 5, and I have a question for you, which is, when you are thinking about, when's the last time that you notice your brain being on a cortisol high with something that you noticed in sobriety, that you were getting like a dopamine hit from something?
Okay, so I've been really delving into fantasy, and that has kind of been my way out. And whereas I'm marking this as progress for me, because in the past I would be all up into the action, like buy now, hook up now, eat now, like everything was the now, and it was like an
Mm.
action. Whereas now it's the subtle escapism of the fantasy and just living there for a few minutes. And I've been finding myself having these like really juicy crushes with like people that are not 100% unavailable. And that they're not also 100% available. They're somewhere in the middle. And I actually think they're leaning more towards actually potentially being available. They just have no idea that, like, so I am finding myself in rejoicing and relishing in fantasy, and allowing myself to live there for, a few minutes, and then, delving back into what's happening now. How about you?
Well, first of all, I love that. I love how gentle and kind what you just said was with Sam,
Mhm.
and that you're seeing like, hey, this is a good thing. We're showing a lot of progress in this area,
Mhm.
and I'm giving myself permission to do this thing. And, also, I'm a big fan of that with, friends that I have that have been married for a long time. And usually it's only the women confessing to me that they have crushes. And I'm like, that's awesome. Like, that is
Mhm.
helpful to your marriage. There's a big difference between taking action on a crush and just having a crush. Like, if
Mhm.
you've been married, 15 years and you get a crush on your trainer, go sleep with your husband and pretend he's the trainer for that day. Like, that'll be great
Mhm.
for everyone on board, and it's fine. Like, give yourself permission for that. Anyways, I digress. Um my my last dopamine hit that I was conscious of is, I think it's shopping. That's what's coming to mind, is
Mhm.
that I really like to go thrifting and antiquing, and I get dopamine hits from finding something that's valuable that nobody else found. And like,
Mhm.
I'll find there'll be 1,700 glasses on a shelf in a Goodwill, and my brain like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Terminator will zero in on this one that has an etching in it. Oh my God, that's real 24 karat gold. And I'll turn it under and it'll be signed by someone. And I'll look it up on eBay. And those are going for $60 a glass. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm a genius. And I get a dopamine hit and I buy 6 of them for $30. And I come home and then I forget to take the picture and I forget to put them on eBay and I forget to do the description. And now I'm a fucking hoarder. Not really, but like Jesus, this is the one that I'm like, okay, I know in the moment it feels like we've struck gold, but I'm being very conscientious today about that dopamine and about what the reality is. And like you're saying, it is progress. Well, no, I keep buying it. But anyways, that's where we're at. Sam. My amygdala's fucked. Okay, is that what you want to hear? There we go.
The answer, yep,
Yeah, it is. Mine is. I don't know about y'all's. So that's it for me. And I hope you guys all have a good week. And bitch, call your sponsor.
Call your sponsor.
Bitch, call your sponsor.
Call your sponsor. Call your sponsor.
Send us an email with comments, questions, or concerns, bcysponsor@gmail.com.
Don't forget to rate 5 stars.